Today we're going to talk about what the most liberal states in the US are. 3 years ago, we looked at the most conservative and the most liberal states the US has to offer. Since about a month after that video, I've been getting requests for an update on it. Not much changes politically in a month, so I thought we could hold off a bit. 3 years seems to be a good amount of time for things to shake up a bit. This video is based on a study by Gallup. They asked people if they consider themselves liberals, conservatives, or moderates. What's really interesting about these stats is how many conservatives live in these liberal states. I promise you're going to be surprised. In case you don't know, liberalism is the predominant left-leaning ideology and conservatism is the predominant right-leaning ideology. Those who hold beliefs between the two or a mix of beliefs on that scale are called moderates. The main conclusion of the study was that conservatives greatly outnumber liberals in most US states, with 39 states showing a higher percentage of conservatives compared to liberals. You see those numbers and you're wondering why elections have been so close. The simple explanation is more moderates are leaning left these days. Now, some of you might be asking, why are we doing this video on this channel? This channel focuses on where you might want to live. We look at real estate prices, cost of living, crime, rental prices, and everything else you should probably know about before you pick a new state, city, or country. Well, the reality is, some people want this information as part of their decision-making process. Political landscape is a serious consideration for a lot of Americans. I'm not one of them. I don't care how you vote, you do you. The way I see the world might be completely different than the way you see the world, and I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers for myself, just like the rest of us, so why would I judge somebody by how they vote? Before we get started, let me know in the comments section which state you think will be number 1 on this. Also, after number 2, we'll let you know some of the liberal states that almost made the top 10. I always get questioned, well, who was number 12? Who was number 13? So we'll give you a few of those. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Maryland. Maryland is our first liberal state and has been considered a blue state since the Kennedy administration. They've had a lot of Republican leadership at the state level, including a few of their most recent governors. The current one is a Democrat. But when it comes to presidential elections, they are a solid blue state most elections. Only 3 times since the Kennedy administration have they voted for a Republican. Nixon in 1972 because McGovern was a tool, Reagan in 1984 because Mondale was a tool, and Bush in 88 because Dukakis took a picture riding a tank and he looked ridiculous. Now, this is how they worded it in the study. Liberal political identification. Basically, how many people said they're liberals? 28% of Maryland's population say they are liberals. Here's where it gets weird, like I talked about in the intro. Conservative political identification, 29%. More people identify as conservatives than liberals in Maryland. But moderates in Maryland definitely lean left. When you look at the most conservative states, Maryland ranks 42nd. So they're really not that hardcore conservative. They just happen to have a higher percentage in Maryland. Number 9, Oregon. I know, Oregon should be number 1. If you watch a lot of cable news, you think Oregon is this liberal fortress that nobody that isn't affiliated with Antifa gets in. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. But cable news has to make you afraid of something. If not, you might do something like, I don't know, go for a walk, read a book, and not watch the news. And they can't have that, so they scare you and tell you places like Oregon are just overrun with Antifa. Here's the deal with Oregon. Portland and Eugene are very liberal. The rest of the state is conservative, libertarian, or moderate, with a sprinkle of batshit crazy. 28% of Oregon's population identify as liberal, while 32% identify as conservative. That means there's another 40% of Oregonians out there that fall under any one of the many things they could be: moderate, libertarian, Buddhists, hippies, whatever. But most of them are definitely siding with the Democrats and liberals in Oregon. But with 32% conservatives, that ranks Oregon number 37 in the conservative rankings. Number 8, Hawaii. Hawaii is considered a highly liberal state. Did anyone know that before just now? I know they're known as a blue state. I just didn't know they were way into the whole liberal thing. I guess they just want sunshine, good waves, and free healthcare. Who knows? Actually, now that I think about it, that doesn't sound too bad. Liberal political identification in Hawaii is 28%. Conservative political identification is 22%. They're the second least conservative state in the union. They rank 49th. Number 7, California. Yeah, surprise, surprise. California is another one of those states where most people, if you watch too much cable news, you're gonna think that California is just overrun with liberals. It's gonna be like 75% liberals. No, not at all. The independents, the unaffiliated, and the moderates make up about 40% of California's political identification. Like so many other states, if you look at the left side of the state, it's very much liberal. But then you go out to the desert and into the hills and stuff like that of California, and it's a different picture entirely. Sort of the same thing goes on in Washington and Oregon. California is actually split down the middle when it comes to the liberal and conservatives. Liberal political identification in California is 29%. Conservative political identification is 29% as well. That puts California as the 40th most conservative state in the union. Yeah, so put your teeth back in your mouth, close your jaw. I know it's a shocker, but that's the truth. Number 6, New Hampshire. New Hampshire is considered highly liberal. And seeing that it's in New England, you shouldn't be surprised. It's very common for people to lean more left or liberal or whatever in the New England states. This is the first of 4 New England states on this list. Before we go any further, what are the other 3? Which 3 from New England do you think are going to make this list? Let me know in the comment section. Liberal political identification in New Hampshire is 30%. Conservative political identification is 28%. Not that far off. They're actually ranked 45th in the nation when it comes to conservative states. Number 5, New York State. New York is considered highly liberal. That one's a no-brainer. I mean, you don't have to watch cable news to know that one. Where most of the liberalism comes from, like so many other states, is their biggest city, which in this case is New York City. They do have a lot of conservatism in New York. That's usually upstate and some of the more rural areas, but there's a lot of moderates outside of New York City, and they all, like I said before, lean towards the Democrats and the liberal side of things. So that's why they always end up being a blue state. Now, I know Democrats aren't always liberals and conservatives aren't always Republicans and all that ins and out, and I'm just generalizing all of it. Whenever I say anything about politics on this channel, I always get someone that just wants to get down to the very most intricate differences in the different groups and all that. It's like, that's not what this is all about, okay? We're not doing that here. These are 10 to 15 minute videos that have some jokes. If you want hard-hitting documentaries, go to curiosity.com. If you want to hear facts, some stats, and the story about the guy in New York I saw that was a streaker, yeah, I don't know if he was a streaker or he was actually running from someone's house, like the husband came home type thing. I don't know what the deal was, but from what I saw, this guy was running down the street, not a stitch on, and he had a good pace going. I think that's why I think something might have been chasing him. And he was very polite, kept saying, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, as he ran past people. Junk just flapping all over the place. Yeah, that's burned into my retina. Liberal political identification in New York State is 30%. Conservative political identification is 27%, ranking New York State at number 48 in the Conservative Olympics. Number 4, Washington State. Washington State is considered highly liberal, and like Oregon, it's just the west side of the state. The east side of the state is heavy when it comes to Republican and conservatism. They also seem to be very religious out that way also. That's my own experience. The liberal political identification in Washington State is 31%. Conservative political identification is 28%, putting them at number 47 in the conservative rankings. Number 3, Vermont. Yes, Vermont is always in my top 5 states I want to live in. Not because of the way they vote, just because of how beautiful this state is. I love Vermont. It's almost like Western Oregon without all the weirdness. They got a little weirdness, nothing near what Oregon has. Every time I've gone there, I always get this feeling like this is where all the hippies went after they got chased out of San Francisco in the late 60s. Now, I'm obviously broad brushing it. Not every single person in Vermont is a hippie, but they got a lot of those types around there, whether they identify as a hippie or not. There's just a lot of that type of person in Vermont, at least when I've been there. Overall, very down-to-earth people. Usually when you have down-to-earth and you got the hippie types, you got a lot of liberalism. Liberal political identification in Vermont is 32%. Conservative political identification is 28%. That's the largest gap we've had here, isn't it? See, there isn't much of a gap between the states. It's a little different on the conservative side, which we'll do that video either later this week or next week, and you'll see a big difference. Conservatives definitely outnumber liberals in the United States right now. It's just those middle of the road people. They're not identifying with the conservative values, views, lifestyle, whatever you want to call it. And that's fine. Do your own thing. Everyone gets to make their own choices in this country. Number 2, Maine. Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, all very liberal, are all 3 of the safest states we have in this country. Absolutely. And even though they're very liberal states, they don't mind having their guns. That's a stereotype again, but most of the time you just assume liberals don't want any guns, anything like that, and it's always the conservatives and the Republicans. They all want their guns. No, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, they like their guns. Oregon's another one. I don't know if I'd consider it gun friendly, but it's definitely not a high priority to get rid of guns in Oregon. But Maine is definitely the second most liberal state in the United States, but it's a little weird. One thing, they can split their electoral votes, which is kind of strange. I think there's one other state, maybe Kansas does that, or Nebraska does that also. Most states, whatever the state went for, all the electoral votes go to that person. But in the House of Representatives, Maine holds 2 seats, both of which are held by Democrats currently. The state has a unique political landscape, with one of its senators being an independent and the other one is a Republican. The liberal political identification for Maine is 33%. Conservative political identification is 35%. Not much of a difference again. That puts them at 29 in the conservative rankings. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to one of these states or any state in the US, there's a link for Home and Money in the description box below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent wherever you want to move to. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Massachusetts. That is our 4th New England state, and it is Massachusetts. Now, there's something about Massachusetts that's always amazed me, and it plays into their liberalism. They are home to some of the finest universities in the United States, and arguably the world. You've got MIT, you've got Harvard. They're within walking distance of each other. Then right across the Charles River, you have the University of Massachusetts. Down the Charles River a bit west, you got Brandeis University, which is an outstanding university. You got Boston College. I could sit here and name probably 20 more, but I'm sure it's getting tedious already. But universities normally turn out people that vote liberal or lean liberal, whatever you want to say. And considering one of their main things they have in Massachusetts is education, it makes sense that they're number 1. Massachusetts is considered highly liberal. Their liberal political identification is 35%. Conservative political identification is only 21%. That puts them number 50 in the nation in the conservative rankings. All right, that's today's video. If you want to see the conservative version of this video, let me know in the comment section below. All right, everyone, have a great day. Be nice to each other.